With so much going on, Donald Trump's dumping of the World Health Organization is a very timely topic. John, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited and I'm really proud of our president.
Yeah,
I'm
I'm
so
glad that
proud
he
of him.
did this. The WHO is a nightmare and has been for some time. We've spoken quite a bit about Dr. Tedros and some of the other stuff. Before we get too into the presentation, John, I do
hmm
want to
hmm
let our friends in the United Kingdom know that even though this image features a Union Jack, it wasn't really intended to. It's just the Who, Roger Daltrey and Peter Townsend, a little play on the name. Won't get fooled again.
Indeed. Indeed. I think, the gist of the show or the title of the show, we won't be fooled again, which is the title, or give or take, with a little poetic license from the Who. The World Health Organization has put themselves out there as the global experts on health, and they are the ones who declare these global pandemics. And as a result of their declaration of these pandemics, we see all kinds of changes in the way the world has operated, particularly air travel, right?
Oh yeah.
And right, the question is, well, who's holding these guys to account? Who's holding them accountable for these declarations that they make? And is anybody fact checking the World Health Organization? And thankfully, it's not just the crowdsource the truth audience that's doing the fact checking, or maybe it is just the crowdsource the truth audience. But now we see that the White House is also fact checking the Who. Thank God,
Right.
because again, these are our tax dollars that the government has been so generous in sharing with the Who. And the question is, well, what are we getting in response? Now, I'm a big believer in philanthropy and helping other people, right? But I'm not a big believer in spending money needlessly or just throwing good money away and not getting results or the
Yeah.
results that we expected to get for that investment. And I believe the president probably feels about the same way, which is if we were doing something good with the money that we were sending to the WHO, that would be one thing. But if we're sending all this money to the World Health Organization and they're just not doing the job that we're paying them to do, well, why would we keep sending them money? And
Well,
I
how about
think
if they're
it's
working
really
against us? That's even worse.
that's where it gets exactly. Well, that's where the whole story starts to get, creepy. And, just at face value, simply with the data, the president's case is made. And that's what we're going to look at tonight in the patron only hour when we go to our Patreon and Subscribestar exclusive hour. I found a whole bunch of reporting at the World Health Organization on not coronavirus, but on influenza. And the question is, was there an influenza outbreak taking place during or prior to the influenza outbreak in the United States? Now, on this show in the past weeks, we've covered the fact that
The influenza outbreak or the COVID outbreak?
the influenza outbreak in the United States was bigger than the coronavirus outbreak. So at the
Right.
at the present time, as we're recording this show, or as we're streaming this show, there's about 100,000, a little over 100,000 people that are logged as having died from coronavirus in the United States. But there's about 145,000 people that have died from influenza and pneumonia-related uh, complications. So the influenza deaths in the United States are a little bit higher than the coronavirus deaths, and they have been. In fact, as we entered April, which was really the devastating month for the United States with coronavirus, that's when the United States suffered most of its deaths, was in April. And as we entered April, we already had 95,000 people dead from influenza. So since the beginning of April until now, about another 50,000 have died. But coronavirus has been in the news. and coronavirus has been the big story. But if more people have died from influenza, and there are treatments for influenza, and influenza was in the flu vaccine at the beginning of the season, why is nobody talking about that? How is that not a topic? Right? We have 100,000 dead from coronavirus, but we have 145,000 dead from influenza. The CDC doesn't want to talk about it. And the question is why? So rather than just harp at the CDC and keep pounding Fauci in the nose until he's, bloodied and embarrassed beyond belief, which is what I've been doing, someone said to me, what about the World Health Organization? What have they been doing with influenza and their influenza reporting? Did they stop reporting on influenza like New Jersey? Did they stop reporting on influenza like New York? Did the World Health Organization do the same thing that New York, New Jersey, Michigan, California did? Is that what happened? Right? So that's what we're going to look at tonight in the patron-only hour.
John, I just got a very interesting message from Luke here in the comments. I don't know if you've heard about this. This is the first I've heard of it. It's something here called COVID Pass, which is this, some kind of digital health passport. And it definitely seems like this is something, or something similar to this, is what everybody is going to need to have, whether it's on your phone or some sort of digital ID or even a chip within your body. It's seeming like we're all being forced into this world. Just today, Andrew Cuomo announced you cannot even walk out in public. Prior to today, it was not mandated that you had to wear a medical mask, but now it is. And I mean, going outside without one, you're taking your chances of getting beat down, stepped on, strangled, and killed by the cops.
Again, it's hard for me to comment on it because you and I and the rest of the audience here are so far ahead of the story as far as what we know about what's been happening. The conversations we've been having are very much fact-based. Not a whole lot of supposition. I mean, everything we're covering, for the most part, we're just digging into the facts. We're just looking at math. We're looking at their reporting, their numbers,
data,
their statements, their statements in public, the things they've said on interviews. We're not putting words in their mouth. We're not making up numbers. So that's why, again, the whole conspiracy theory notion and, being lumped into that category, I don't get it. Again, we're just reporting here. We're reporting on what others have reported on, or doing the digging ourselves. And what you're going to see tonight on the patron-only hour, when we go to Subscribe Star and Patreon, that's where you're going to see the reports from the World Health Organization on influenza. And the question is, if the World Health Organization declared a global pandemic in 2009 when Obama was president, right? They declared this global pandemic in 2009. And only 12,000 people died in the United States of it. And now we have 145,000 dead, but the WHO didn't declare a pandemic. No wonder the president is cutting off the funding. It's like there's no one home. And as in the pre-show that we're going to do here on YouTube, we're going to go back to a couple of the maps. I want to show you guys some things that were in the news recently, but I want to go back to the beginning. When you and I first started this whole conversation about coronavirus, and I just thought it was a virus, and you said, no, there's something dark here. And I went to those maps, and I said those maps were designed to deceive people and to scare people, right?
Yeah.
And it was the maps, right? The maps kind of put everything into motion, because when I saw the maps, I'm like, that's the system I set up. This was the system that I configured with ESRI when I was working at Oracle back in the 80s. And so it was that linkage for me personally that enabled me to get into this thing and figure out what was going on rather quickly. And so in the pre-show tonight, one of the things we're going to do when we go through this, the presentation, I want to go back to the same places on the maps And I pre-did it for Jason because Jason has a hard time zooming in and out. So you won't have to use the live map. Everything is in the deck. I pre-clicked on everything for you. So
Cool.
when we go to the deck, we're going to go to Laos, we're going to go to Cambodia, we're going to go to Mongolia, and Jason doesn't have to zoom in and out. So it'll make it much quicker because the zooming is a
Yeah, I
major
went to
pain in the neck.
public school. I don't know
No, it's
geography
the
that
sensitivity.
well.
It's the sensitivity when we're live.
It is.
All right. So
Now,
if
wait a
all right,
minute.
so why don't
One
we go
quick
to the
thing.
deck? Yeah.
One quick thing.
Sure.
Before we go to the deck,
Yep.
because I'm looking at these numbers here. Thank you, by the way, for telling me how to use this map and get directly to the information for New York. But it's interesting to note that, since April, which was the biggest month, this is leveling off. Like what is this telling me? The number of new cases, the number of total, whatever it is, this is not increasing at the same.
Tab. Underneath that, click on the third tab.
Right.
Not the first. You're on the first tab
City.
now. Now click on the third one. But click on the third tab.
This is the first. This is the second. That's the third.
Click on the third.
Yeah.
And when you click on the third, okay, so now instead of seeing a logarithmic curve, what you should see.
Oh, the third tab here.
Yes, exactly. That's
going down like crazy. So why is Cuomo making the orders stronger, other than he's an idiot?
So, right. So now what you're going to see tonight as we get into these charts is where are we seeing fewer and fewer new cases on a daily basis, like in New York, which is what you're looking at now, versus some of the places that you and I were talking about 8 weeks ago when I was saying, what about Bangladesh? What about Burma? What about Indonesia? Right? We were saying, what about Brazil? Well, now Brazil has about as many people dead as New York. Right? And they're calling for, if you look at Drudge Report, they're calling for the removal of Bolsonaro.
What?
And he has as many dead as Cuomo. And they're talking about Cuomo for president. Okay, so this is the disconnect.
I'll move to Brazil if Cuomo becomes president.
Yeah, so this is the disconnect. So in Brazil, he's got about as many dead as New York, and they're calling for Bolsonaro's head. And in New York, everybody thinks Cuomo's showing great leadership, and he's got more people dead than India, Pakistan, and Indonesia combined, and China. So I'm really confused by how they've been able to spin this thing. And, again, this is gaslighting, astroturfing. All the terms, they're all in this story. Everything's being used. Who's behind it, right? Who really was behind this coronavirus thing to make the president look bad and get him on his heels? That's the astroturfing part. Who was behind that, right?
Well, yeah.
Hard to say, but we think we know, right? So a couple major characters. But Dr. Fauci says in an interview that he did, this was like a radio interview with Philadelphia AM radio 990 The Answer. And in this interview, which Breitbart reports on, Fauci says, of course I would prescribe hydroxychloroquine to my patient if we didn't have any other option. And,
when did he give this interview?
Let's see when this was.
Pretty recent.
Yeah, a Tuesday. It says appearing Tuesday, and this story was just reported recently. So Dr. Fauci in the interview says, if there's not another treatment, absolutely. And again, if I didn't want to take the medicine for Ebola because it seems a little heavy-handed to me, right? And I'd prefer to take hydroxy. It sounds like Dr. Fauci's okay with that. So if my doctor's okay with that, why is CVS giving doctors in America a hard time about prescribing hydroxy, right? Hydroxychloroquine. So there's a lot of hypocrisy going on here. And we're not talking about the Hippocratic Oath. We're talking about hypocrisy, right? So if Dr. Fauci in one interview says, I would prescribe it to my patient, well, then what is CNN and MSNBC and NBC? Why are they all worked up into such a tizzy? All right, let's move on to the next aspect here in the deck because there's so much more to cover in the pre-show before we go to Patreon.
Yeah.
So this is this remdesivir vaccine, and
Is it a
they're
vaccine or
already,
it's a treatment?
well, they're calling it a vaccine candidate, but it's a treatment. The terminology that you and I use, we would call this a treatment, or this is used to. It's not a vaccine.
Yeah.
This is used as a
Antiviral.
treatment.
Yeah.
Correct, but again, the fact that they're going into trials with it against the virus, the fact that it's even potentially effective. I mean, why isn't it the mumps vaccine or why isn't it the chickenpox vaccine? The fact that the Ebola vaccine, which is the one that Fauci's got a connection to, and has these patented spike proteins, those
Yeah.
what was
GP
it, the
120, the
GP1 120s?
glycoprotein.
Yeah. So he's got these patents on the GP120. It's just too coincidental. It's not comfortable. If these vaccines take so long to develop, how do you have one that just happens to work on something accidentally? Or it's just a coincidence, right? That the spike proteins just happen to, be coincidentally the same. Turkey is using hydroxy, and they're using it successfully. I mean, it's being used throughout Europe. And again, this is one of the questions to Dr. Tedros. Why is Dr. Tedros not taking a stand? Yes or no? Is hydroxy effective? Are the countries that are using it seeing results? Yes or no? Why is that not being reported? I'm not right. I'm not comfortable with that. Obviously, the president's not comfortable with that. Right.
Yeah.
So Turkey's been using it successfully. Let's keep going. We got more to cover. Yeah, dramatically reducing cases, right, in Turkey. So again, sometimes it helps to look around the world and to see what's happening in other parts of the world, what are other countries doing, right? And Turkey's having a bad outbreak of this thing, and yet they're using hydroxy, and it seems to be working.
I don't really
But
trust anything from Turkey, though.
well, they make good weapon systems. They make great arms. Their
Yeah.
their military stuff is really good. This is the chief medical officer in Romania, and these guys are epidemiologists, and he comes into play. He represents Nevada, so this is the guy. So
What do you mean he
interesting character
represents
here.
Nevada? I thought he
So he's the
is
chief
Romanian.
medical officer. Yeah, but he's the chief medical officer of the state of Nevada. So
Ah,
this is the guy who's advising Sisolak. So when Sisolak is closing down Nevada or opening up the casinos or whatever the heck they're doing over there, this is his chief medical officer. So this is the guy and it's Dr. Ihsan Azam. And Ihsan Azam from Cluj, Romania, is the chief medical officer. And then
but he
the
lives
medical
in
epidemiologist,
Nevada.
I believe so. But what's interesting is the medical epidemiologist and the state biostatistician that work for him, they don't have like degrees in this. So Stephanie Woodward has she's a PhD in psychology, I guess, but she's the epidemiologist. So why would a mental health professional, right, a doctor, a PhD in psychology, be your epidemiologist? I don't know.
Yeah,
Seems like a
psychologist has
mismatch there.
no medical training whatsoever.
Yeah, it's almost like saying, the guy who grooms my dog is also my veterinarian. Like, huh?
Right.
Is she qualified for this? I don't know. So she has a PhD in psychology, but she's the epidemiologist for Nevada, and then the state biostatistician for the Department of Health. And again, so that's Nevada, right? So that's your Nevada team. So the decisions that are being made for the state of Nevada, 1, 2, 3, that's the crew. That's the team.
And no, well, this guy's a medical doctor, but other than him, nobody.
He's a medical doctor from Cluj, Romania.
Well, I don't mind
Right.
that. I thought you meant he
No,
was
okay.
the chief medical guy for Romania who was also helping Nevada, but he's just a
No.
Nevada
He's
citizen
the
of Romanian descent.
Then we get into the U.S. Army Medical Research Institute of Infectious Diseases. And, one of the questions, this is, Fort Detrick. This is the work that they were doing at Walter Reed. And one of the questions I think that we have to pose to former President Barack Obama is in 2005, when Fauci was resurrecting the virus, Obama had not yet been elected, but he gets elected in 2008. And then we have an outbreak in 2009, just like Fauci predicted for this president, right? So right after we have a new president, we have an outbreak. And in 2009, there's this H1N1 outbreak, and the WHO declares it. So the question is, well, why didn't Obama turn to Fauci and say, destroy it? Destroy that H1N1. You let the genie out of the bottle. I see what you did. You're bragging about it on your website that you resurrected the virus. Why didn't we destroy it? Like smallpox.
Good question.
Is there smallpox? I mean, I don't think there's smallpox virus left on the planet. I think we destroyed the last sample of it.
Well, they say that it's been eradicated, but actually that came up with another guest who was saying that certain countries do still have it, but that it's coming from vaccines or something. So could be a case similar to what you're describing with the resurrected Spanish flu. Now, John, we've got less than 10 minutes until we begin the sponsor-exclusive show on Patreon and Subscribestar for I Am John Cullen and Crowdsource the Truth. Do you want to maybe just kind of give us an overview of what remains here, and the rest of it we'll cover during the sponsor-exclusive show?
Exactly. So here you just have a couple of names of some of these rock star microbiologists who have been working alongside the government at the CDC. So in other words, Fauci's not the only name, right? Fauci's the guy we get to see on television. But who are sort of the rock stars of the world of microbiology, the names that keep coming up in these documents again and again and again, enough so that they have their own Wikipedia pages. And these are people like Lisa, Lisa Henley?
Hensley?
Is that how you pronounce it? Hensley. So Lisa Hensley. There's a number of other, you can just page down, there's a couple of other characters here, and their names just keep coming up. Bruce Ivins. Yeah, so Bruce Ivins' name comes up a lot in a lot of these documents. And so these are some of the, the key people that are behind the scenes here in the resurrecting of these viruses, the creating of these glycoproteins, the patenting of these proteins.
This guy died by suicide from an overdose. That sounds like something that could have been made. That's interesting.
Never know. Yeah. So it's a very interesting list of people. And when you read, their accomplishments on Wikipedia, it's fascinating, the things that these guys brag about having done. Okay, and then here are some notable scientists. So this was the list of scientists that I found on the page, and I went from there and I said, okay, so they're, basically they're giving you their list of rock stars. So these are the rock stars of the world of viruses, and fascinating group of people. I'd love to hear what these guys have to say about the creation of these coronaviruses and the creation of this mRNA stuff, and these mechanical animals used to deliver portions of RNA, etc. So these are the folks. These are the names behind Dr. Fauci. You want to know, who's doing the heavy lifting. So one of the questions that we're going to try and get to the answer to tonight when we get into our patron-only hour is we looked at this potential super spreader event in Wuhan and said if this coronavirus had been let out of the lab or something in October, might that event have been a super spreader event? Like the Super Bowl. Might the Super Bowl in Miami have been a super spreader event? Might have been. I don't know. Seems like a reasonable estimation. But what I started to realize when I dug into the World Health Organization stuff that we're going to see in the patron-only hour is that a lot of the athletes who went to Wuhan were already sick, but not with coronavirus. A lot of the athletes who go to Wuhan are infected with H1N1.
You're not
And
watching
I'm gonna
George Webb, are you?
No, I have no idea who he is, to tell you the truth.
Good.
But H1N1, I'm going to show you the H1N1 outbreak in other countries, not the US, prior to the Wuhan games. So, whoa, wait a second. This changes everything. If there are countries that were experiencing an H1N1 outbreak prior to the Wuhan games that send people just infected with the flu to China, and now we have an outbreak of H1N1 influenza around the world, but nobody says anything about it. Nobody mentions it. Is it the same strain that came from Walter Reed? Is that why it's not in the news? Did the Walter Reed strain from 2005 kick off a global influenza pandemic that no one's talking about? And we're going to look at that tonight in our Patreon-only hour.
Yeah, we're just about ready to transition over to that. So we'll see everybody in just under 5 minutes on patreon.com and subscribestar.com/I am John Cullen, and patreon.com and subscribestar.com/crowdsource the truth. Thanks for watching, everybody. We can't keep these shows coming without your support and sponsorship. So join us on Patreon and Subscribestar. We'll be there in just a few minutes, and you're going to have access to a huge library of sponsor-exclusive content over there. We'll see everybody soon. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.